all these really, really smart people coming out of Harvard and Stanford and all these other places, MIT. He said, just because they're really intelligent doesn't mean they have high morals and integrity. And the easiest way for them to get really rich is make some bullshit coin and get a VC to pump it, and they make $100 million. Like, that's literally the easiest path to a lot of money. So it takes intelligence, but just because they have intelligence doesn't mean they also have integrity and morals. I always understood the value proposition of Bitcoin, and I think I've continued to try to understand it even more deeply. Even from day one, I feel like it just clicked. It was like, oh, yeah, that's way better than what we have now. Let's do that. And the more and more I read about it, the more I'm convinced I was right on that initial instinct.
SVRN is much more than a premium energy drink. Crafted with precision and purpose, SVRN is the perfect blend of physical vitality and financial sovereignty. Infused with premium ingredients like L-tyrosine, L-theanine, vitamin C, vitamin B complex, as well as alpha GPS to orchestrate a symphony of energy-heightened cognitive prowess and calming clarity. And that's not even the best part. With each sip, you're not just recharging yourself, but you're also accumulating Bitcoin. Each can has a hidden QR code that with just 3 clicks brings you Bitcoin, a minimum of 500 Satoshis and up to 1 million Satoshis with each can. Sip your way to sovereignty with SVRN Energy. Head to SVRNenergy.com and use the code Blockware for 10% off. Before we get into the episode, I have to tell you about the simplest and best way to start mining Bitcoin, the Blockware Marketplace. Our new streamlined onboarding process means you can literally buy a Bitcoin mining rig and start mining in under 60 seconds. All of the machines available for sale on the marketplace are online right now at one of Blockware's facilities. You don't have to worry about lead times or finding a place to get your machine plugged in. Blockware has already taken care of that for you. You get to mine completely hassle-free. And if at any point you decide that you no longer want to mine, or if the price of ASICs increases and you want to capitalize on the higher value of your machine, you can list your rig for sale at any time and at any price. This platform has completely changed the landscape of hosted Bitcoin mining. And the best part is that this all takes place using Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. Get started today at marketplace.blockwaresolutions.com. This video is sponsored by Stampseed. You plan on holding your Bitcoin for decades, so you need to make sure that your seed phrase is documented in something that can last just as long. Stampseed's signature titanium plates and stamping kits do just that. If you simply write your Bitcoin seed phrase down on a piece of paper, it's vulnerable to fire, water, and all sorts of erosion that can happen over time. Make sure you keep it secure for years to come. Head to stampseed.com and use the code Blockware15 for 15% off the entire website. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blockware Podcast. This week we have on 4-time NCAA finalist, 2-time champion, historic MMA career, Ben Askren. Ben, thanks for joining us.
What's up? Excited to be here. We grappled at Pacific Bitcoin, and then I went and found your Twitter handle, and I realized that you post some content that I enjoy following. So that's exciting. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I made the mistake of shooting in on you, and then my neck was sore for like 4 days after you choked me out. I'll put the video up for the audience.
That's funny. I'm sorry. I didn't try to do it that tight.
Yeah, no, it's good. I wasn't going to tap until I absolutely had to. And also the grip strength thing is true. I should have known because I've seen the video of you crushing the watermelons and like you grabbed my wrist. There's like nothing I could do.
That's funny.
Yes, sir. So you, the two things that have had the biggest impact on my life are wrestling and Bitcoin, and you're a crossover of both of those. So you're someone I've wanted to talk to for a long time, and we'll get into Bitcoin probably towards the end of this episode. I want to start with current events, though. So,
but Bitcoin's so exciting right now. We're actually finally coming out of this bear market, starting to look rosy. I'm so excited. We can talk about other stuff, but I'm excited to talk about the Bitcoin also.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're up to 31,000 now. Last week was insane. We had the fake ETF news pump in a day, and now we've regained everything that was lost from that pump.
Wild.
There's a lot to be excited about for Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about UFC 294, though. What were your overall thoughts on this event, and then just the guys stepping in like on very short notice? Is that something you've had to deal with in the past? And what are your thoughts on all that?
You know what? I never took a short notice fight. A big part of it was I was the champion for so long in the organizations that I was with, right? I was with one championship, for 3.5 years. I was the champ for 3 of them, and then I was with Bellator for like 4.5 years, and I was the champ for like 3.5 of them also. So when you're the champ, it's rare that you get the short notice fights, especially with Bellator. They had to build up to the tournament. I did get offered one, but it was after I got knocked out the only time in my career. And when you do that, it's a mandatory 45-day suspension. So they asked me to fight. I'm like, I'm suspended. I don't know. I don't know if anyone told you that. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So, you know what? I didn't love that these guys did that, but at the same time, it's like some of these guys just really enjoy fighting, and that was kind of what Volkanovski said. He's like, I love fighting. I hate not fighting. I hate not competing. But obviously, he rushed himself into this, and it was not the best possible performance by him. I don't know if that makes sense. So, sometimes it can play a positive, but sometimes it can kind of be a big negative, and it was for him.
Yeah, definitely. I was expecting more of a dogfight, and I guess not having that full camp definitely hurt him a lot.
Yeah, just when you cut a bunch of weight, and then his timing was probably a little off because he wasn't actually in camp. And in MMA, it's inches, and you instead of having your hand here, right, you have it here, and now you take one to the top of the head like he did, and then it's over.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that happened recently is Dillon Danis and Logan Paul, and you, of course, have experience shit-talking a Paul brother. So would you say Dillon Danis took it too far, dragging Logan's fiance through the mud the way he did?
Yeah. Well, everyone's got their own set of, like, morals, I guess you would say. I always tried to stay away from people's family, people's religions, stuff like that. Like, I don't feel that it's necessary for me to bring those in. Some people have lower standards, and Danis is a training partner of Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor, obviously brought in Dustin Poirier's wife. He brought in Khabib's religion. So he has no boundaries on his trash talk. So I don't know. No, did I have higher expectations of Dillon Danis? The answer is that's no, not really.
Yeah. What do you think of all this, like these YouTuber influencer boxing matches? Obviously, you were a part of one.
Yeah.
Do you think this kind of stuff is good for combat sports? I know a lot of people are like sticklers and think it's a bad thing.
I think some people are just grumpy. They just want to hate on everything in life. I don't know if it's good or bad. I kind of see it as like indifferent, like its own thing, and maybe a positive. The maybe would be maybe it's making fighting and boxing cooler for the younger generation, because one of the things that the older generation complains about a younger generation being, they're so soft and they're so wimpy. Well, if that were the case, then boxing, fighting, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, these type of things are great for them, right? They need to get tougher. Good. So they need to go do some combat sports. It will make you humble, give you some discipline. It'll do all those positive things for you. So that would be the maybe positive. I have no proof of that statement. And, as far as like the negative of, it's bringing it down, it's like, okay, well, there's already trashy stuff that happens in UFC, and boxing can be super trashy also. But I think people see it as its like own thing, its own little carnival or circus. I know I didn't really love the circus of it. A bunch of the parts were kind of like, I love competing, but it was like I had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops, and the show night was just it was just so ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember it's like sort of suffering through like 4 hours of like the Triller, like kind of just trashy previews waiting for you to fight Jake.
Yes, seriously.
Yeah, it's an interesting niche. I think anything though that gets people interested in combat sports is probably a net positive, just because there's like young men are just searching for something like that, and it'll really help. On that same vein, like wrestling, the mental toughness of it is the biggest thing I took away from that. What did you do specifically throughout your career to really train your psyche and get mentally prepared for matches and fights?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of different parts of the sports psychology. I've been doing this thing called Mental Mondays for it feels like forever now. And I actually have a sports psych book coming out. It's like pretty much done. We got to get a publisher and everything else. But so I'm really into the mental side of it. And I think as far as match preparation or peak performance is a little different than a lot of other things. Peak performance is, in my opinion, and it's kind of what the book is about. Is about balance, right? If you want to perform really well, you're going to kind of let all the thoughts go and just roll with it, compete. Whatever happens, happens. Where in practice, you're going to need to be like super obsessive with, oh, I made this mistake, I made that mistake, I need to fix this, I need to fix that, and you're going to be like really, really hyper obsessive about all the little details and nuance. And then in a match, like if you're spending too much time worrying or thinking about being perfect, you're probably going to lose a good opportunity to score. So I think those are kind of like opposites of each other, and that's kind of a lot of what my book is about, is like how a lot of these mindsets are oppositional to each other and how you can use both of them to benefit you. And then, as far as training, I think wrestling, you kind of said this, but I think it's great for discipline for kids. And there is some stigma around the weight cutting or making weight. And it's not as bad as it was. That's not saying there's not still people cut too much weight. There is, for sure. But, I mean, if we don't look at America, there's a lot more problem with obesity than there is with people being too skinny. I mean, by a factor of, 50. And you think about, like, obesity, all the bad things it leads to later in life, and how much early mortality there is due to people being really overweight. So, people being really disciplined with what they're eating and what they're putting in their body and watching their weight is, there may be some negative instances, but there's probably a lot more positive to it than negative.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's interesting what you said there about, in practice, that's really when you want to be thinking a lot and really dialing in. And then in the match, you just want to let go. I can sort of relate to that with this podcast, right? I do a lot of preparation ahead of time, but then like I have this sheet of notes, and like when it's go time, I'm not even looking at that, right? You just, if you're prepared for anything ahead of time, then when the time comes to perform, you just, sort of set free from that. I probably cut too much weight back in high school.
Oh,
man. I even lied to my coaches and my family about how much I was cutting. I was walking around about 132 and I wrestled 113, and
Dang.
I could definitely say it negatively hurt my performance. Like my body just started to fall apart at the end of the season, but I don't think that's typical. I don't think most kids are making that sort of cut. How do you approach?
And honestly, as a coach, I don't know your coach at all, right? I don't know where you went to high school, but for me, I know I'm super dialed into all the kids I coach. So if I see one of them at practice, I can tell when they're cutting too much weight. It's like, wait, what are you doing here? You look like shit. Like you're not, what, and so then we talk about it, and sometimes, kids do stupid things like they don't eat enough, right? Or they start weight cutting way too early, or they are just wrestling, plain and simple, the wrong weight class. So it's like a coach who's really dialed into his athletes is going to be able to see. You wouldn't have been able to lie to me. I'd be like, dude, you look like shit. I know you don't really weigh whatever you're lying about. It's definitely more. And, we would have tried to come up with a solution to make it better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a problem for a lot of high schoolers too is you don't have this like nutrition. You don't have nutritionists around, right? I was cutting weight in just the absolute wrong way, just like eating nothing. There's nobody to guide you. You just hear from like an older guy, oh, he did it this way. He ate just like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And
that's where I think the coach has to be involved. Or a good coach, I think, is involved in that also, and educating their guys on, what probably is the best weight class, what are the best practices. Like for high school kids, I think the worst one, these idiots, they just don't eat for like a day and a half. And it's like, dude, that is so dumb. And it's like, you need to still eat. You need to have energy, and then you need to work out a little bit. Like go for a run, or wrestle for a little extra, or do these things. And so generally you can eat all your meals, maybe a little smaller than normal, right? But you can eat them all, and then just you work out at the end. It's pretty simple. So it's kind of like, we definitely go over that. Not with the younger kids, because we don't want them really doing anything or almost nothing. But with the older kids, we got to get the practices right.
Yeah, for sure. I was the idiot who would not eat for like 2 days before a match.
Oh man, that's the worst.
Yeah, it was brutal. So what are your thoughts on like general diet then? Are you a fan of like carnivore diet, eating seed oil free? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm not super picky. I you know what? After my hip surgery, well, I'll just tell you the whole progression. I competed at a high level from probably like age 14-ish is when I really got really serious. And I retired for the first time in 2017, so I was 33. So I competed really, really high level without any serious breaks for 19 years straight. I mean, there was no maybe a couple months off. But like there was never where I didn't compete for a year. Like that just didn't happen. So when I retired the first time in 2017, I said, I'm not going to get on a scale and for a long time. And so 9 months later, I got on a scale and I said, you know what? I don't want to be really fat. And I was kind of got fat because I was just doing whatever I wanted. And I said, I'm not going to be fat anymore. I said, I'm going to wrestle in a tournament, Midlands. It's a Christmas tournament, right? I'm gonna wrestle just so I have a weight to make. So I have something to be disciplined about. Okay. So I started dieting and, working out more regularly. And then that was when I got the call from the UFC about, you're being traded. And right, so it was good because my weight was already coming down a little bit. That probably happened a month after I started kind of like working out more. So I got traded to the UFC. So then I competed for another year essentially. So then it was like, kind of 21 years straight, if you will, maybe with a few months off there in that first retirement. So then I retired for the second time, and I was actually going to get my hip done, and then it got pushed back because Corona. Because remember Corona, everything was closed from like March to June of 2021. So I ended up getting my hip surgery in September of 2021. So there's another one where like, okay, I'm not going to worry about anything. And then when I got my hip surgery, they literally like, you can't do anything. Like I could start riding a bike at like 3 months. And it was like, you had to ride it like really, really light and blah, blah, blah. So I got really fat. And then I got the boxing match. But then it was like, okay, well, I'm probably retired for good. So either I'm going to be fat for the rest of my life, or I'm going to be disciplined and I'm going to, stay in shape and I'm going to work out regularly. And I just thought that was so much a better course of action for a disciplined individual to do that. And so I don't have any super strict diets. I eat a lot more beef than I used to, a lot less carbs. I stopped eating dessert 8 months ago. That's been really beneficial for me. But no, nothing super, super specific.
Yeah. Was it hard to stop eating dessert?
You know what? I love dessert, and I thought it was going to be really hard, and it wasn't that hard. I just stopped, and then you know what? I thought I would like miss it a lot, and like I don't really miss it that much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've kept it desserts like exclusive to the weekend, but maybe I don't even.
So that's what my wife
sort of
wife said I should do. Weekends or vacations or something, and I'm like like I don't miss it that much, so I'll just keep not eating.
Yeah, I mean, if it isn't broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
How do you approach training kids, right? Because you want wrestling to be fun, you want them to fall in love with it, but at some point, probably around high school, you want them to take it more serious. Like, I want to be a state champ, I want to wrestle in college. So what's that transition like, and when do you really start pushing these kids out of their comfort zone?
Well, it's all on them. So, we started them at 5. Obviously not everyone starts with us at 5. Some of them kind of come over at, our thing is usually once they come over, they don't leave, right? So if they start at their local club or they start at a different club and then they find us, once they find us, they're not going anywhere else, right? They really enjoy being at Askren Wrestling Academy, and we have them kind of forever. So, probably middle school is when we encourage them to get more serious, but I really think it's like it's got to be on them. Like, it's on them. They either want to do it or they don't. And if they want to do it, we have the tools. I mean, I was telling you this morning, we had Keegan O'Toole has made the world finals again. So he won a world title in 2021. He's in the world finals. We had another guy win a U20 world championship 2 months ago. We just had a kid win the Super 32, which is like one of the biggest folk style tournaments. So we have people succeeding at the highest levels. And all of it is like, we are your resource if you want to be really, really good. So they're going to decide it, and then once they decide it, we're there to provide all the resources they need to be as good as they want to be. But I'm not big on forcing kids to do anything.
Yeah. Can you tell from a young age who's going to have that killer mentality?
Every once in a while, I'll see it, and I'll think, okay, I think someday they're going to be pretty good. But there's been a lot of kids that surprise me, and then I'm also open to the kids who aren't good being good if they want to be, right? And we've had a lot of kids who weren't even any good all the way up to like 8th grade, and then they go compete at the Division I level. So, I mean, they go from being a, not good wrestler, even kind of like locally or statewide, to a guy who's competing at the Division I level. And once kids really decide they want to do it, they can make huge jumps.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing. One of my teammates in high school, he started off like probably the least athletic kid, the last one you would expect to be successful, and then he went on to have a really great career at a D2 or D3 school,
Nice.
just purely off of hard work.
Yeah, wrestling's very egalitarian like that, where it's if you do the right things, anyone can have success. And I point to someone like Anthony Robles, who he was at Air. I can't really say I coached him because he had one leg, and I don't know what it's like to have one leg. He kind of like created some of the things himself, maybe with the help of some of the other assistant coaches. But it's like, how many other sports could that happen where a guy with one leg reaches the highest levels of the sport? And it's like, it can't. But wrestling is one of those things where it's like, doesn't matter if you're tall or you're short. You got short arms, you got one leg. Like, if you really, really want to be that good at it, you can do it.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's why I got into it. I was tiny. I was going to high school. I was 80 pounds and like less than 5 foot tall. So there went my football and baseball aspirations. That's why I love wrestling. It's funny you say that. I actually had a coach with one leg too, and
really?
couldn't practice doubles on him. Had to just like collar ties and stuff. Yes, sir. So you have a son. How are you thinking about getting him into wrestling? Because you don't want to like force
all
it
my
on
kids
him,
wrestle.
I'm sure you want him to. Okay.
Yes. So all my kids wrestle. So my daughters are how old are my daughters? My daughters are 8 and 10. So we start at 5 years old, and the thing is, like, we say they're gonna play all the sports, right? So it's gymnastics, soccer. Ozzy's played t-ball, right? The girls have done some basketball camps and stuff like that. So it's they're gonna do all the sports, and then when they get older, they can choose what they want to do. And so that the age is 10, and so like my oldest daughter's 10, she's just choosing to do all of it. She really, really enjoys wrestling. I would imagine she's going to continue doing wrestling for quite a while. I have my second one. She's 8. She doesn't like it quite as much. She's like, when I get to 10, I'm going to be done wrestling. It's like, okay, cool. You got to make it till 10. And then the other thing about that is they have to compete some, because I love the idea of wrestling is it's you and it's only you. And this is what I loved about it. And I think it's just a necessity for people to understand in life. It's you and it's just you. And that's it. You're going to go out on the mat. You're going to compete with someone else. And all the things are based upon you. And I feel like everyone needs to have that experience. And that that's an experience that a fight can give you also. But that one-on-one experience of this is on me, I can do this. So she's going to compete a few times this year. And then Ozzy, he's 5. He really enjoys it at this point. So I'm assuming he'll keep enjoying it, I would think.
Yeah, that's what I love about wrestling too. It's all on you. It's personal responsibility. There's no excuses. You can't blame your teammate. You can't really blame the referee. It's like if you mess up, you didn't train hard enough, or you weren't ready for the match. At that age, are the girls wrestling the boys, or is it just like...
At age 10, there's some of both. There's some all girl stuff, but there's some girl and boys. So there's just not a ton of girls at wrestling. I wish there were more. We're trying hard to build it, but there's just something about the combative martial arts that boys seem to enjoy more than the girls. So there's some, but not a lot.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say is harder, MMA or wrestling? Because I've gone back and forth on this with some of my friends. The grind of wrestling, you're having to make weight so much. Like, I could definitely see an argument for that. But then MMA, you're also like, the risk's higher. You get your face bashed in. So what would you say?
Well, one of the things I always think about is that, it's like how many people do you need to beat out to succeed at something, right? And so it's like, MMA, I always thought from a skill perspective was a little bit easier because there just aren't as many people doing it, right? I mean, how many youth kids that are doing mixed martial arts? The answer is like not very many. How many adults they're doing it? Not very many, right? And so the pool of skilled athletes is a lot smaller versus wrestling. In just America, there's like 1 million people who are participating in wrestling. And so when you talk about that many people, the cream rises to the top, and you're gonna have to be better than a lot of other people. So I think the path to the top in MMA is maybe a little easier and a little shorter. Will that change at some point? Obviously there is now more money by a lot in MMA than wrestling. So is that going to motivate a whole bunch of more athletes to try to take that path? I think it's possible, but then also it's like, it's not like basketball or football or something like that. Like it's just it's kind of a little different type of person who wants to get punched in the head for a living.
Yeah, a lot of that makes sense. What would you do to grow both of those sports, right? Because I find that like I love wrestling, but it's still a pretty small community, and like the only people who are really interested in it are former wrestlers or like family of wrestlers.
Yeah. I think it's growing immensely. Flow Wrestling became like a really good live streaming platform probably about a decade ago. And I see the Big Ten Network has a ton of matches on. And so, as a spectator, you can watch a lot of really good high-level wrestling. So I think wrestling is getting more popular. To grow at the highest levels, I think probably some type of professional avenue would be really big and important. And for a variety of reasons, that's not happening. For MMA, I think from a popularity standpoint, of people watching it, I think it's very popular. I think it's kind of exploded probably since the pandemic, in the last 2 or 3 years even. It's really like even spiked more. Like it was getting more popular into that era, and then it kind of hit another one. And I think that's because fighting is so easy because you don't really need to know the rules. Like, dude, I watch football now. I forgot the rules. Like, I don't really know all the rules. I used to watch it a lot. I don't anymore. So, I sat down at my mom's house and the game was on, and I was like, oh, I forgot that. Or I forgot, stuff like that. With fighting, it's like, since we were kids, someone fights on the playground, you kind of know who wins, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's pretty evident. So you don't really need to understand the rule set all that much to understand who is winning. But on a participation level, like I said, it takes someone who's a little bit different to want to get punched in the head for a living. So I don't know that participation is ever going to go up that much in fighting, but I think from a spectator standpoint, it's very popular.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in 2020, COVID is like the only sport to watch. Everything else was not on, but Dana White's like, all right, we're going to go to this island in Abu Dhabi and we're going to have fights. It was awesome.
Well, their first one was actually in Jacksonville, if you remember it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they went to They went to Jacksonville first. The mayor or something. It was DeSantis was the governor, and then the mayor. They made it happen. I don't recall exactly what it was. They did I think 3 weeks in Jacksonville, and then they did Fight Island in Abu Dhabi, and they made it happen.
Yeah, for sure. One point I want to talk about is NIL. How do you think that's going to affect college wrestling long term? And with your high school guys, is this a conversation you're having during the recruiting process?
Not really. And we've had some of the very, very, very best kids come through. And I haven't seen too much talk about NIL. I think it's more likely it's happening on a much greater extent in other sports, basketball, football, etc.
Yeah, definitely. So this is where we could probably start transitioning into Bitcoin because that was about money. So this is a good segue. Yeah, all right. I can share my insights. Okay. So first, I want to hear how you got into Bitcoin. I believe you came from like the Ron Paul sort of libertarian point of view. What caused you to realize that the monetary system we have now is broken?
So I guess you call me a conspiracy theorist. Although at this point, like they're just conspiracy theorists are kind of just right too much. It's like hard to call them conspiracies anymore. It's just like maybe an alternate perspective. Oh, that mainstream media, they're wrong all the time. So, so I don't really recall when I got into reading Ron Paul and really following. I know I voted for him in 2012. I think it was maybe 2008, 12. Yeah, I mean it's a long time ago, right? And so, I read End the Fed, and that was like, okay, I understand why the monetary system in America is unfair, and it's probably more unfair in other countries than it is in America. So I understood that. And then actually a friend who I pushed down the rabbit hole came up a whole bunch of years later. I was actually at a fight in Shanghai. He at the time lives in Australia. And so he would come to my fights when I was fighting in Asia. And he's like, hey, I got to tell you about this thing, Bitcoin. And he goes on, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Well, let me buy some. How do I buy some? And so he started showing me how to buy, and I started buying at that point. That was my fight was September 2nd, so it was probably August 28 of 2017, somewhere in there where I started buying Bitcoin and stuff. So I kind of got in, and then I got a fun 3-month run up, and then we got the bear market for 2 years ish or whatever. But I always understood the value proposition of Bitcoin, and I think I've continued to try to understand it even more deeply than I did then. So it's like, I don't know, even from day one, I feel like it just clicked. It was like, oh yeah, that's way better than what we have now. Let's do that. And the more and more I read about it, the more I'm convinced I was right on that initial instinct.
Yeah, I sort of had it the same way. Like, once you figure it out, it's like there's no going back, right? The more you learn about it, the more convinced you become. I literally spend every day trying to think, like, what am I missing? Why am I wrong about Bitcoin? And there's nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're right. I think conspiracy theories, you just can throw out the theory part because they're just conspiracies that happen, right? Like the Federal Reserve was literally created to keep the bankers wealthy and to extract wealth via inflation. It's not even a theory. It's just fact. So throughout this bear market, what have you taken a certain strategy? Or are you doubling down? Like,
no,
on
you know what? I haven't actually been able to buy that much more because I was a dumbass. Because you know what? I knew it, and I said it so many times. Quarter 4 2021 is going to be the top, and my strategy was going to be. And I told I did this podcast with John Kim, and at the very end, this guy Jason Williams, Going Parabolic, joined us.
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine.
He always said never sell. He would say reverse mortgage your house, all this wild shit. And I would always say, we got in this argument multiple times. It's like, okay, if someone bought Bitcoin, right, in the last cycle, if they bought it at 10 and it's now at 70, and it's going to change their life. I'm not telling them to cash out 100%. I don't know, cash out 30%, right? Cash out 30%, pay down your house or something. And then maybe when Bitcoin goes down, because it probably inevitably will, buy some more. And so it's like, that was going to be my strategy. I was going to sell in the quarter 4 of 2021, and it got to 69. I just didn't think that was the top. And it started going down. I'm like, okay, there was the extended cycle theory, and there was all, I'm like, surely it's going to go back up. Like, there's no way 69 is the top. And then I just kept holding, and actually I bought a commercial property at the end of December of 2021, and I did the what Michael Saylor recommends, like the lend against your Bitcoin type thing. Not lend, sorry, borrow against your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So I did that to buy the building because I didn't want to sell any Bitcoin, and then it just kept freaking going down. And so, you know what? I ended up holding, and I didn't have too much extra cash to keep buying all that much more. I would have obviously liked to sell a few at 70, and then you can buy 3 or 4 back when it's at 16.
Yeah. Well, you didn't get liquidated on your loan, did you?
I never got liquidated. No, because I was way over collateralized. I didn't need that much money. I wasn't aggressive. So I do kind of feel like a dummy though, because if I would have, I think at the time when I took the loan, it was like 45 or something per Bitcoin. So if I would have just sold at that point, right, and then bought, used what I needed to make the down payment for the commercial building that we're in, and then from that point, buy a little bit when it goes down. The problem is you never can predict when the bottom is, right? Is it 16? Yeah. Was it 22? What was it? You don't know until it actually gets there, and then likely you're well past it by the time you realize, oh, that was actually the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if I would have sold some and then bought it, but hopefully I'll just keep holding the Bitcoin and paying for the loan. And then, in say quarter 3 of 2025, I'll be up by many multiples or something.
Yeah. It sounds like the market psychology got you on both ways. You didn't expect it to be the top or the bottom. It's crazy how it always works like that. Always and does. I would agree with Jason. Don't sell your Bitcoin, man, because the way I think about it is,
well, wait, hold on. In the example I just gave you, why shouldn't I have sold? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't have sold, say, 30% of what I had in quarter 4.
Because you're coming at it with hindsight right now. In the moment, the bull market could have kept going.
Okay, but at some point it was going to go back down, right? Cycle theory is like, okay, we've been through 3 of them. And so last time was actually the smallest crash, and I think it was like 74% or something.
Yeah. But also the way I would throw back at you is at some point I don't think we come back down, right? If we get a lot of these institutions to come in, ape in, if BlackRock and Fidelity and all these have their clients just starting 1-5% position, we're going to go way, way up. And at that point, I don't think we get these massive bear markets. And that very well could have been the case in 2021. Obviously, it didn't turn out to be the case. But at some point, we do hit this escape velocity. You would never, like if you're, let's say you're in Lebanon and you're holding dollars to hedge against their inflation, you wouldn't sell your dollars at a profit and cash out for liras, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, if you're in a different country and a different currency, I say, yeah, for sure. But, so, okay, let's imagine in quarter four 2021, I sell 25%. And it just keeps going up. Because that could happen this time, right? It say, right? At some point, I do agree the cycle theory will end. But, I got to imagine, we hit a 76% drawdown. If next one's only 50, that's way less. Right? We're going to have some type of drawdown next time. Is it going to be 40? Is it going to be 50? Is it going to be 60? I don't know. But there's no way we don't have a drawdown, because now the other thing at this point in time is like a bunch of smart people like you and I are saying, well, we're at the top of the cycle. We're 18 months past the halving, and I'm going to sell some because I bet we're damn near the top. Right? There's going to be a whole bunch of people who do that. And then maybe there's a bunch of institutional holders, and it only goes down 46%. Right? Listen, I'm not getting out of Bitcoin. I'll probably buy some more. But I think it's a good trade.
Potentially. I would just never sell. I would, one, never get rid of my whole stack.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Yeah, I know you didn't. I know you didn't.
Okay.
I know. But two, I wouldn't sell for dollars, right? I would guess I would do it like you did and maybe get rid of some of it for a different asset or to buy goods and services, right? Like selling your Bitcoin to just hold dollars and put the fiat in the bank account is counterintuitive to me.
Well, so for a lot of people, this is why I would argue with Jason. Jason was rich. He was a little detached from reality. So I'd say two things. Well, number one, right now the Bitcoin loan, it's expensive. I pay for it every month, right? It's not cheap, and I have a very high level of conviction that it is going to go back up, which is why I'm holding it and paying for the loan. I think at some point those price points will probably go down quite a bit because people will realize Bitcoin is the best collateral on planet Earth. So I think that'll go down, which makes just loaning it out even a better idea than previous. But then I think the other thing is like, okay, for someone who is middle class, if they can pay off a decent chunk of their house, and I know some people will say, oh, it's only 3% or 4% or whatever, right? And they can take away that expense from their life. Like there's some type of peace of mind that comes with that of like, oh, I'd been paying off my house for 20 years and I had 10 years left to pay. And because I was able to invest in Bitcoin and be smart and sell at the top, well, now I don't have to make a house payment for the next 10 years. Like that's so, and this is the argument I make with Jason, that's so impactful for some people, And so that's kind of that's the angle I would take on it. But yeah, listen, yes, I think Bitcoin is the best asset. But I think for some people to have a little peace of mind and pay off some of their house or something, I think it's probably a really good idea.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
And the key thing about real estate is I think Bitcoin demonetizes it, right? A lot of the demand for real estate is because we have a crappy money that doesn't hold its value, so people need something to put their value into. Right now, and historically over the last few decades, that's been real estate and the stock market. But now that we have Bitcoin as this superior by all measurements, right? It's more scarce than real estate. It's more divisible, fungible, portable, et cetera. A lot of those savings are going to go into Bitcoin, and real estate's not going to have this monetary premium. It's just going to be demand from people actually wanting it as shelter. So I think Bitcoin always forever will appreciate against real estate and other hard assets.
You're so hardcore. I don't disagree with you, but I think again, this is the same argument I have with Jason Williams. Talk about a 64-year-old person, and they're two years away from retirement, and their main living expense is their housing payment, and now they get to pay it off 10 years early. Like, I don't know, there's something to be said for that. So yes, I agree. Bitcoin, better investment. And my wife actually was trying to buy rental properties, and I was like, nah, why would we do that when we can buy Bitcoin? That's dumb, So like, I'm on the same page as you, but I think there's something to be said for selling a little bit at the top. And I will. Next time, I'm not gonna mess up. I'm gonna buy. So I'm gonna sell some at the top. You know what else I'm gonna do next time? Because you put this in the doc. Yeah. I'm gonna do some shitcoining.
Oh,
okay.
No.
Hold on. I'm gonna tell you exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm all with you. Bitcoin's the best. Bitcoin's number one. I love it. Okay. all the way down the rabbit hole. But I think there's no way in the next cycle that you can buy some shitcoins and they're going to go up at a higher level and you just got to sell. Or this is where people get greedy. And especially, I didn't really do any. I bought like one or two other things last cycle, and I did sell them at a significant gain because I wasn't a dummy.
In terms of Bitcoin or in terms of dollars?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, no, it was more because like Cardano, I bought Cardano and it went up. It went from 8 cents to, and I didn't sell it quite at the top, but pretty close. It went from 8 cents to 2.50, I think, something like that. And Bitcoin in the last cycle went from 3-ish on the bottom to 69 at the top. So that's 23x versus like almost a 40x. And then I bought Ethereum at, it was right after the crash, right? So you're talking March 2020. I think I bought Ethereum at 160, and Ethereum went to, and I did sell some Ethereum like right at the top, like picture perfect timing. Like 4,400 or something to that effect, So that was like almost a 30x also. So yeah, I know. So yes, in Bitcoin terms, I made money. In dollar terms, I made a lot of money. Listen, it's the bull market. All these shitcoins are going to go up and likely at a higher multiple than Bitcoin.
No, that's where I disagree, man.
Okay, hold on. All right, let's get into it. I'll just tell you, in 2017, I was a fool. I bought a bunch of them. My buddy who got me into Bitcoin also was into a bunch of shitcoins, and a bunch of them went up by a huge multiple, and I didn't sell, and a lot of them went to zero. And so that was the last cycle. I'm like, okay, I know I don't want to sell Bitcoin, but I know I have to sell these other things because they are going to go down by an insane factor, more than Bitcoin. So I'm going to sell them, and I sold them with proper timing, and I anticipate doing the same thing this time.
But see, this next bull market though, that last it was retail stimulus, like degenerate Wall Street
and that
bets,
degenerate SBF freaking selling Bitcoin. Yeah, that's what ruined our 100K. That degenerate. Him and freaking CZ was probably doing the same thing, I'm guessing.
But here's the thing. Here's what's coming in 2024 is this spot Bitcoin ETF. It's not an ETH ETF. It's not a Cardano ETF.
Yeah,
Wall Street's buying Bitcoin. Crypto's getting regulated, right? The SEC is going after Coinbase. They're going after Binance. All these shitcoins in terms of Bitcoin are going to go
SEC,
down.
They're toothless. They couldn't beat Ripple. If they can't beat Ripple, they can't beat anybody. They are winning 0 lawsuits. They suck.
It's true, but Wall Street still, they don't want the shitcoins. They want to buy Bitcoin. So I think this idea that shitcoins will outperform Bitcoin in the next bull market, I don't think that's going to be the case. Okay. They'll go up in dollar terms, but I don't think they'll go up in Bitcoin terms.
All right, Mitchell, here's the thing. If Bitcoin goes to the moon, I'm super rich. So we're cool.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy. And so I'm gonna gamble on some of those shitcoins. I'm not gonna tell anyone what I'm buying. I'm just gonna buy a little bit of this and that. And have some fun because I like who doesn't like gambling? We all like gambling, right? And I will have my stack will still be 80 to 90% Bitcoin, and I still think it's the best. And I'm not going to promote anything else like I haven't in the past. People say shitcoin. Litecoin is Bitcoin Lite, right? It is literally the same protocol. I know people don't love Litecoin. Besides Litecoin, I haven't really pushed anything else. 0 other things.
Litecoin is a commodity in the same way that manure is a commodity, right? You don't want to store value in manure, but it is a commodity technically.
Yeah, I suppose I think so. You know what? Litecoin's chance was that the SEC was actually successful in suing a lot of those other cryptos. And made them securities. Because if all this other stuff became a security, Cardano, Ethereum, et cetera, if they all became securities, then the money would flow into only two places. It would be Bitcoin and Litecoin because that would be the only other one. But since the SEC can't do anything, they can't get anything done because they suck. I don't know. We'll see where Litecoin goes. But yeah, that would be the only thing else. But that would be from a sound money protocol. It literally is the same code as Bitcoin with 2.5 minutes instead of 10.
I would say it's a winner take all, but we can have that conversation for another day.
Fair.
Because I know we've got about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, 5 more minutes.
So my last 2 questions. First, I've been listening a lot to Michael Saylor.
Are you saying you never bought a shitcoin?
No, I'm not saying that, but I won't buy
you're busted.
Any further. No, I got into Bitcoin in late 2020, and I shitcoined for a couple months. I got lucky. I became a maxi at the shitcoin top, so like the few things I did buy, I made out in Bitcoin terms. But I'm going to say, if you want to gamble, mining stocks are better than shitcoins because they're not going to get regulated into nothingness, and they have that
Bitcoin mining stocks.
correlation with Bitcoin mining stocks,
Yeah.
and they're correlated to Bitcoin, and they're probably going to have a higher beta. But I'd still say just buy Bitcoin. But mining stocks, I do have a small percentage of my portfolio in mining stocks because they might outperform Bitcoin.
That's fair.
So my last two questions. One is I've been listening a lot to Michael Saylor and his 10 rules for life. I've been incorporating them. So what advice would you give to young people, specifically young men?
Oh man, Michael Saylor's 10 rules for life. That's those are good ones. I probably should have thought about this more when I saw the doc, because I did this on the doc. I don't know what would tell, because I feel this is something very profound and I should spend some time on it. I would say have a high set of morals and ethics, and that is something. Actually, my buddy John Kim, morals and ethics are something that are in very low supply within the crypto community. And John Kim made this argument to me last time. He said all these really, really smart people coming out of Harvard and Stanford and all these other places, MIT. He said just because they're really intelligent doesn't mean they have high morals and integrity. And the easiest way for them to get really rich is make some bullshit coin and get a VC to pump it, and they make $100 million. Like, that's literally the easiest path to a lot of money. He said, so it takes intelligence, but just because they have intelligence doesn't mean they also have integrity and morals. So I think that's a huge one, because I think if you don't live with those things, and people can deny this and lie on this because I cannot prove this, but because there's a few probably I would say like bad decisions or decisions I regret, and I probably went to those people and apologized to them. But when you do things which you know are wrong, you feel them inside you forever. Like you're like, damn, I shouldn't have. Even if it was something stupid, like you said something to someone that you probably shouldn't have said. Like if you don't go back and say, hey man, I didn't really mean that, or I really said something and I probably shouldn't have, and that was dumb. You feel that. So unless you can live your life with morals and integrity, you're gonna really have kind of like a hole inside you for a while. And then the other one I'd say was like find something you're really, really passionate about, especially when you're young. And if you can get really, really good at it, you can make a living doing it. And that's, I think a lot of, I don't know your exact path, but, like I think of Will Clemente or Dylan LeClaire, like, they kind of like made their own way into the positions that they're in. Like there was no clear path there. And, like with the wrestling academies, me and Max is my brother. We're doing it differently than anyone's ever done it before. And it's like, well, this is our passion. This is what we want to do. And we're going to put a lot of time and effort into it. And we got really good at it. And we're able to do something that no one's done before.
Yeah, that was really well said and quite profound. I appreciate it, Ben. My last question, I ask this to everyone. What does Bitcoin mean to you?
I think the biggest one would probably be freedom. Right. And I think that's something a lot of Bitcoiners believe in. And I don't know, whether you're reading The Sovereign Individual or The Fourth Turning, like, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know that we're going to stay in the same nation state model that we have now forever. Like throughout my lifetime, I feel like there's going to be something different happening. And I think like a lot of people are becoming more and more awake to how we're being misled by mainstream media, or how the monetary policy is not fair, especially once we get some hyperinflation. They're really going to realize that. So yeah, I think it's freedom. I think it's I guess going with freedom would be, and I think someone has some saying about this, but would be responsibility, right? Because when you take the time to own Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin, in cold storage, I do multi-sig. You have the freedom, like no one could take it from you. It's mine. I know where my wallets are, and no one else knows where they are. And no one has access to my money, not the government, not anybody else. But obviously I also have to have and this is where a lot of people are struggling, because a lot of people don't have enough responsibility in their life. A lot of people are struggling because they're like, I am not responsible enough to hold my own money. Think about that. I am not responsible enough to hold my own money. There's so many people who are scared shitless of holding even a small amount of money on a Trezor or, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Bitcoin's freedom, and with that freedom comes responsibility. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Ben. Yeah, do you have anything you want to plug or want to send the audience to before you leave?
No, I'm excited for the next bull market. I believe it's kicking off here. I think we probably go somewhat sideways until the halving, and then probably start moving up. I think we'll probably get a little bit of a move up when the ETF happens. Which I think it's, if I was a betting man, and I just told you I like to gamble a little bit, I would bet on it happening before the halving. I think that's pretty likely. I think we'll get a little bit of bump, and so my guess going into the next halving is somewhere between 40 and 50. But when you get to be a really good Bitcoiner is when you stop looking at the price. Because when it was shitty, I just, for months, I'm like, I'm not going to look at it. I'm holding it. I'm not going to sell it. I'm just not going to look at the price anymore. So, but my guess would be 40 to 50 in the next halving, and then we just start a really strong move up. To your point, I like your point about so much money flowing into ETFs and everything. But obviously each cycle last time was like bottom to top was like 20 to 23x. I don't know. I kind of feel like this one's a little bit less, so maybe like a 15 to 18. So maybe 200 something on the top, but maybe we would have got more last time if that idiot SBF wasn't selling Bitcoin to buy bullshit.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of research on the diminishing returns theory. I'll send you some stuff to that. I think the next cycle we actually do better than the previous cycle.
Listen, I love that.